And I hope my voice does okay. I take, cardiologist has me on high blood pressure, and it destroys your voice. I've tried different kinds, and it gets weak. But you can hear me okay, can't you? All right. Jerry, as I went out the door Sunday, says, "Oh, well, you will teach the class Wednesday night, won't you?" How did you say no? So here I am, and I hope you can put up with me. We have a few announcements. Now, Noah's going to read the entire list. I'm just going to give a few tonight that's added to our prayer list. It's been told that Roy Bilbrey had triple bypass surgery at Centennial today, and he's doing good. Ginger Gustafson, and I may be pronouncing that wrong, but she's the little girl in the wheelchair, and she's having some problems, and I forgot what Mary Lou said it was. In her feet, got a lymphoma, you think. Okay. So we need to pray for her. And Eric Carter has been in an accident, but I don't know if they found out in the test or what, but anyway, he has some heart issues. So we want to remember Eric. Eric Carver, I'm sure. They've been here and they've come back recently, yes. And I think that's all. Oh, yes, I have one more. We all know Jimmy Cook. Well, Janie Cook, his wife, has heart issues. And she's in St. Thomas, and they did an arteriogram on her. Today, we don't know any results. So that's 4 we need to add to our prayer list. Are there any other announcements? Yes.
I had an MRI done on my brain yesterday, so say prayers that turns out okay.
Yes. You did this, you had an encephalogram or something? MRI? Okay.
MRI.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Well, at this time, Brother Ansel's going to lead us in prayer and remembering the sick for us.
Father, thank you again for another opportunity to be here tonight and work with you. Help us, Father, to do our best to focus on you and work with you. Be with those, Father, with vision, to give us health problems, and pray, Father, thank you for the food to live for those who die. And thank you for the blessing of the Holy Spirit. Father, thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, and the great sacrifice. That was willing to look at the cross, died for us, and all he left us to do is to live in the day. Father, give us the faith and courage to do that. Let it be with us as we go through this service tonight. We will not be moved. Keep us in your care, take it all back on the cross.
As I said, we are on regular Wednesday night, we're studying chapter 20, in which we're covering the 10 Commandments. And Jerry has been doing a very thorough and good job at discussing each one of them. I think everybody knows what a euphemism now is, don't you? Well, we discussed that 2 weeks ago and a little bit last week, I think. But what I want to do, and I asked him if it was okay with him, because he'll come back and cover what I do anyway. So I'm going to take a different approach tonight. I'm going to talk about mainly covenants. Now, covenants were something that were well known and well practiced in the old world of the day we're studying. We have covenants today, but we call them by different names. We call them, we have contracts, we have treaties, and we have other various covenants we have. But basically, a covenant is usually what's known as, and I'm going to introduce you to this word, some of you know it anyway, but it was called the Great Suzerain Covenant. Now, a suzerain is nothing more than a Asia Minor or Asia itself potentate. Now, he was the great king. It means above all. So this is the ones that they dealt with in Daniel and all these Far Eastern kings that conquered them. But and there's kings everywhere when you study them. There's a king of a hill, and a king of a city, and a king of a valley, wherever there's a group of people. And you remember, even in the days of Christ, Herod was a king, and he's a pretty powerful king, but still he was subjective to the procurator from Rome there. You had to work under his guidance and under his jurisdiction and so forth. But the great one is the one that does the binding of the contracts or the covenants. Now, covenant, I think, still deals mainly with a king talking to his people. Now, he could be an emperor or anything else. He's still going to be the great king. There were a lot of empires during this period of time. You had the Greek Empire. You had this was before the day of Rome, of course. But then you had the Babylonian, and you had the Assyrian, the Syrian, and so forth, and Egypt. And in this day, Egypt is the most powerful nation in the world. And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we start talking about a contract. But the reason I'm studying this is that I think you'll find that this covenant that God is making with the people at this time is really something they're familiar with. It's not just all of a sudden he bombs them with 10 commandments, you know. But they're familiar with this type of an arrangement in a covenant. And when we enter into contracts, anytime we enter into an agreement or a contract, why, usually you have a period of negotiations, and you finally come to a point to where that you either reject it or you go ahead with it, you know. And there's all kinds of, you have to have a lawyer too with you, so you make sure that everything's spelled out in the right language, the vernacular of the lawyers, so that it won't be easily broken. But there is another term too in contracts. They're only as good as the people that's in the contract there, whether they will honor them or not. Usually you spell out what you're trying to do in the contract and what these obligations are with one person versus the obligations of another. And they're both pivotal on making sure the contract does what they want it to do. And that's to make a profit, usually. So, but how do you, if one doesn't live up to it, what do you do? Well, you have to build in some kind of restrictions and penalties and things like this so that the other guy doesn't lose everything. And so, and this happens in also in a covenant. Now, surprisingly, some of our first economic people like Adam Smith, that goes way back, and others of that age, were strong church people. And when he wrote Wealth of Nations, and some of you I'm sure has read it, but they didn't figure that if people were not religious, they wouldn't honor contracts. So how in the world were you going to have a business contract if people wouldn't honor it, you know? So they thought it was imperative that people be moral and ethical and honor their contracts. So you have to have some way to do this. The government decided, I'll take the place of God, I'll step in and do it myself, you know. And so that's what we're laboring under now. But I want you to look at what we have to do when a high lord or the great lord or the one that's above everybody else talks to his people. Now, in this type of contract, it's not equals negotiating or doing anything like that. It's a mighty guy talking to his vassals. And he's saying, now, I have a right to be king, and you have a right to be my vassals here. So we need to come to an understanding. That's what it is. We're going to have this understanding. Now, what a king does to make sure that the people understand he's got a right to be the king, that he can be the ultimate authority in which they have to appeal to and who they depend upon for security and everything else. But he starts telling them what I've done for you. I've delivered you from this. I've kept you secure from that. I've fought your battles. I've kept a monetary system going. We've got a very good feudal system. You vassals are doing pretty good right now. So that's the reason you ought to keep me as king and not revolt. And besides that, you know, I'm almost as mighty as God. And here's what I want you to do in this contract. Now, this is the contract that usually some characteristics of it. The great Lord will present his credentials. And I've just touched on that a little bit. I'm so and so and so, and this is what I've done. And like I said, it's a contract between unequal, so there's no bargaining. It's yes or no. And, if no, it could be bad for them. And also, in a contract like this, he tells you the benefits of such a contract. It's going to be very beneficial to you. And such benefits is that I have chosen you as my people. I will watch over you. I will protect you. I'll secure your homeland. Fields, and God made this promise, fields that you will not even have to clear, houses you won't have to build, cities you won't have to build, and it's virtually a land of milk and honey. All you've got to do is obey and follow my lead, and I will lead you into this land of promise, virtually flowing with milk and honey. Now, I want you to listen to the Ten Commandments as we present them here in a few minutes. Now, let me say this about a covenant. It's a serious thing when you enter into a national covenant. This is the great leader and his people, whatever you want to call them, the proletariat, or it's the public, or it's whatever they happen to be named at the time. In this period of time, they were just vassals. And that meant they owed everything they owned, and they were either vassals or tenants, and about the same thing. It being a very serious thing that everybody's lives, down to the minutiae of them, is dependent on this thing working. And so he's got to sell it, but he does it in a very strong-armed way. But it's to his advantage if the people approve it. So I'm going to turn back to make this thing very serious. Now, what is the condition of Israel at this time? They're practically a no nation, aren't they? They do have clan, they have family, clan, and tribal bonds, and they've been able to hold that and establish them while they've lived in Egypt for 400 years. So they do have divisions that you can sort of marshal the people, you can move them, you do all this, but they've just escaped bondage, public bondage, if you will, in Egypt. And they cried out long and hard for the work that they had put in for the state. But it seems to me when you study it, they still owned their own homes. They still lived in their own lands. They just had to do service for the king, probably months on end or maybe a year on end or something like this. And so they were able still to hold to their own homes. They didn't break up the homes or anything like that. They did cause trouble in Egypt in that they were overpopulating. And a country has to worry about a fifth column developing in a country. Do you understand what a fifth column is? That's a group of people who don't necessarily like you. They're sort of low on the totem pole. And if a conquering nation comes toward you, they might join with them. And they'll be fighting from within. So that's always a great danger. Rome faced this danger because they had about half of their population were slaves. Varying orders of slaves, but they were slaves. And there was always a potential they could rise up and knock them down, you know. And slavery has been with us since the very beginning. It's a very bad institution. But in the beginning, when they were establishing territory and they were conquering other nations, what could you do with prisoners? You didn't want to slay them all, so you could put them to use maybe. But that was better than dying for a lot of the people, you know, particularly if you took pretty good care of them anyway. And so slavery established that way, I think. And so it's been with us, and thank goodness we've finally thrown the yoke off. A man shouldn't own another man, should never get to that. But civilization is only a very thin veneer, and under great stress it can be thrown off very quickly when we find ourselves under those circumstances. Hope to God it doesn't happen in our time. How did God prepare these people for what he was going to do? Now, I'm going to just revert back and read a little bit and see if you recognize some of the things he's doing. How do you get people serious about things? You got to scare them sometimes, haven't you? You've got to frighten them. Well, in the 19th chapter here, which we went through, but I want to just read it from a little different view here. Now, the Lord talks to Moses. He says, "Then Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain. He said, 'This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did in Egypt, and how I carried you out of Egypt, out on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites.'" Now, this was the aim that Israel, and this was the mission of Israel through the rest of the nations. They were to be so God-loving and God-forming and obeying God that the people would look at this great nation that has evolved by God's blessings and be drawn to God. That was the purpose of it. They were to be drawn to God. Israel was to apostolize. They are two words close together, aren't they? Opposite meanings. They were to win converts by their actions, by their good deeds, and by their close following of the Lord. They never quite accomplished that, did they? And so they began to have ups and downs in their dealings with God. So Moses went back and summoned the elders and the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. Now the Lord said to Moses, "I'm going to come to you in a dense cloud so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you." Then Moses told the Lord what the people had said. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and have them wash their clothes and to be ready by the third day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people." Okay, what can we learn from this a little bit? If you're going to meet God, you've got to sort of prepare for it, haven't you? Now, where do we meet God today? Don't we meet him in worship? In the assembly? There where two or three are gathered in my name, I am also. And that's our purpose of assembling, is it not? To worship. And God's got to be there to accept it or reject it. So we meet him in worship. Now, if people were required at this time to wash their clothes and to present themselves in the best way they could before the Lord. After all, if you went before an earthly king at that time, what would happen if you showed up dirty and in rags? What's that a sign of? Pardon me? Disrespect. Disrespect. Well, if we do the same thing to the Lord, is that not a sense of disrespect too? Now, he didn't say go out and get new clothes. Now, I think it's entirely possible that it's okay to come with your best ones, but clean up, look your best, and that's quite acceptable. And there may be occasions you don't have time to do that. Most important thing is to get into worship, I think. But I think it tells us that we have got to show deference to God if we're going to worship him. Now, put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, be careful that you do not go up to the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whosoever touches the mount shall surely be put to death. He shall surely be stoned or shot with arrows. Not a hand is to be laid on him, whether the man is an animal, or is man or animal, he shall not be permitted to live. Only when the ram's horn sounds, a long blast away, they go up to the mountain. So, 3 days fair for this. Get them in the right mind, sort of consecrate them, and probably some prayers and things like this. But it was beginning to look pretty serious there. Now, my commentator, one I was looking at, I couldn't find my best one laying in here. But she gave me a gift she and Bobby did a long time ago, and it was by the Southwestern Company. And it did a whole explanation of this type of a covenant. Now, I looked 2 days for it, couldn't find it, so I'm having to pin on memory. But anyway, it's important that you enter into this meeting of the Lord in the right mind. It's serious, very serious business, because if you get too close to that mountain, what's going to happen to you? And a little later on, it says even the priest and the 70 elders can't get too close to it. I might just break out on you. So, stiff-necked, and would there be people that would do that? You run into all kinds of egos when you are dealing with people, don't you? And especially when you're into a nation like this in flux, there's going to be pecking orders established. And so the guy at the top, the alpha's going to have to put on a show. He's braver, stronger, and more resistant than anybody else. So you've got all this in the crowd here. And so God gives them a tough warning here. You do not violate this, or it's to your doom. And the commentator suggests they probably put fences and posts and things like this around it so they would not encroach on that. Now, we hear this trumpet. It's described in some of the verses there. This one, I think, does translate it correctly. It's a ram's horn. That's what Israel always used, was a ram's horn. That was a natural horn, was it not, that you could blow? I mean, they dealt with goats and sheep. And so on a horn, if you can blow it correctly, you can really make a sound with it. But this is exceedingly loud today. But let's get on into what happens today. After Moses had gone down the mountain to the people, he consecrated them, and they washed their clothes. Then he said to the people, now prepare yourselves for the third day, abstain from sexual relations. And on the morning of the third day, there was thunder, there was lightning, and there was this very thick cloud over, black cloud, the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast. Now, most ram's horns are not that high up in the octave. They get loud, but they're more in the middle of the sound octave there. They're more the alto or a French horn type against the trumpet, you know. But you can still have a pretty good blast out of that. And I think God probably had the ability when he speaks a little bit later on. Was it a very clarion blast that shook them there or so? Or was it more or less like a foghorn off of a big ship? You've heard those things, haven't you? Whatever it was so impressive, it scared them to death. Everyone in the trance, and you know, a bad thunderstorm coming up violently there, it always has wind and it says lightning. It says it had lightning and all against there. That's enough to scare you, isn't it? I mean, if it's striking the ground and doing all this, you're looking for cover if you got any sense, you know. The old adage that lightning don't strike in the same place is nothing but a story. What do you think a lightning rod does? It draws it so it can dissipate in the ground without tearing the building up. I guess they knew that from experience. Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it with fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace. So it was hot too. A furnace is hot. Why would he describe it any other way unless it's just hot, like a fire going? The whole mountain trembled violently. So here we're standing, they are at the foot of the mountain. They got these pegs or a fence or something, warning you not to go over. They're backing up from that. You got this fire, this storm going on, and all the racket of the trumpet, and all of a sudden the ground starts to shaking. You're getting a earthquake. Now that will shake the strongest spirit, will it not? I guess if we were there, we would probably be trying to go the other direction as far as we could, wouldn't we? But anyway, they're compelled to stay there. And he had warned the people that they do not force their way through to see the Lord. And many of them, what would happen if they saw the Lord? They're going to be able to hear him, but what would happen if they saw him? It's always been instant death, hasn't it? He permitted Moses to see his hinder part as he passed, whatever that means. But Moses could, and as valued as he was by God, he was only allowed to do that. Otherwise, you died. So God was good to him standing in this cloud. Even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out against them. Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up Mount Sinai because you yourself warned us. Put limits around the mountain and set it apart. We've covered that. The Lord replied, go down and bring Aaron up with you. But the priest and the people must not force their way through to come up to be the Lord's, to see the Lord, to the Lord, or he will break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. Now, we go into the Ten Commandments, but I want to look at the people here just a minute. When the people saw the thunder, this is verse 18. When the people saw the thunder, the lightning, and heard the trumpet, and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed in a distance with fear and said to Moses, speak to us yourself, and we will listen, but do not have God speak of us, or we will die. They've lost interest in seeing him. They don't even want to hear him now. Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. God has come to test you so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning. Now the people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites this, you have seen for yourselves that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make any gods to be alongside me. Do not make for yourselves gods of silver or gods of gold. God is strictly against idols. By the way, we'll get into the commandments now. I'm going to just go briefly through them and see if you recognize this as a treaty, as a covenant. What it is more or less an abbreviated series of sentences and paragraphs. It was originally translated the 10 words, but we know it's more than what we regard as words. Some are paragraphs, some are at least all of them are sentences. I want you to see if you recognize what's going on. Okay, let's look at the salutations and the introduction of this. It says, and God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. It's just identifying himself who he is. You shall have no other gods before me. What did they learn in Egypt? What was Egypt really about besides delivering the people out of bondage? Was it not the time that God, who had mainly talked with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and down through this, but had not been on the world scene as far as dealing with a bunch of people here that he might call his own? So we've wound up. Now, how is Egypt making out all this period of time? They got their gods. They're worshiping their gods, and they're the strongest nation in the world at this time. They're full of prosperity. They're enjoying prosperity, everything else. So they have great confidence in their gods. So if God's going to go up and prove himself to the people that he truly is the high God, he wants to pick out the strongest, does he not? And so he defeats him, doesn't he? In every corner. And Moses and Aaron go down and tell him, you know, the God said this now, and this is going to happen. And after the first one or two, where the magicians were able to sort of play a trick or two and look, try to downgrade the miracle, after 2 or 3 times at that, they couldn't duplicate anything. They couldn't mimic it. And so it proved, as each one went along, that God was very selective, that he was destroying their gods. Their gods were hopeless. They could do nothing for them. They couldn't save these people. And so he comes out of Egypt, and he's something to be considered. This people he's chosen. And here's this God leading them by a pillar of fire at night and a cloud by day. And he sort of gets in between them to put distance between their enemies from time. He's made quite a reputation. And you remember when they first went through, left Sinai and went up to go into the land, they sent in the spies. I don't know why they had to spy out the land, except it was to restore confidence in the people, maybe. They should have had confidence in God. He's the one that fought their battles and delivered them up to that period of time. But they go into that, and 2 of them are really good at it. But the point I wanted to make was, even at that time, who was it had heard about this God of Israel? All of Jericho had, hadn't they? And who was it in Jericho that harbored these people and kept them from being captured? She feared God. She feared this God. She says, remember me, when they escaped. And they said, well, we'll have this red ribbon, and when we come, that was 40 years in coming, but when we come, we will save your family, you know. So God had already made a world reputation. And it was beginning to shift thinking to a central God. Prior to this time, it was not, was it? Well, let's hurry along here so I can get as far as I can. You shall have no other gods before me. There's nothing is God outside of God himself. You shall not make for yourself an idol in any form of anything in heaven, above, or on the earth, beneath it, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th generations, for those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. All right. Now, in this treaty, this covenant, this great suzerain covenant, there are certain characteristics. We said the great Lord presents his credentials. It's a contract between unequals, no bargaining. I'm the God who defeated the gods of Egypt. I delivered you from Egypt and your bondage. Are there any benefits by following me? And as I said, I've chosen you as a people. I will watch over you, protect you, secure you, a homeland. And I went through that. But he says, these contracts, I've lost the page, here we are. They're also the great suzerain. He has duties, expectations, and requirements. And he'll spell this out in the law. But also, he has restraints that have to be obeyed. Both, plus and minus, has to be obeyed. And he gives a list of restraints starting here. But they're beneficial to him in the long run. You love me, keep my commandments. Now, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless or misuses his name. Does anybody think that profanity, cursing, and vanity of words here elevates any society? Is any society you've ever known that just goes to profanity ever risen because of it? I can't think of one. I read a lot about history. But so the Lord's telling them what's going to keep them more or less solidified. A language does solidify people. Remember the Sabbath day and keeping it holy. 6 days you will labor, do all the labor, and he goes on, and Jerry will take this up. He started it, but God rested. He intended this to be a day of rest for the people, a day of meditation, stand in your house, thinking about the law, about what God demands of you, and thinking, too, how good God is to you. He's sparing you from the enemies. He's fighting your battles. He's providing you with things. And by the way, you know, when they came out of Egypt, they had great herds, but they couldn't eat them. They ate manna the whole time, and quail. Why was that, do you know? Now, nothing happens without a reason. They had to maintain these herds for sacrifice. The religion demanded all kinds of sacrifice for this many people. And they had to bring them into we call it the Holy Land today, but the Promised Land at that period of time. Now, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land and the Lord your God is giving you. Now that's a one of promise. This is the first one of promise, I think. Why is that a good promise? Why do you see it as a promise? What do Bedouin-type tribes do with their old people? Our American Indians did it all the time. When you get to where you can't pull your load, they set you out to die. They do it as humanely as they can, but they do so. Now, he's teaching you take care of your older people. Now, when you get old, what's going to happen to you? If you've taught your children correctly, they're going to take care of you. And that's going to lengthen your life and the quality of your life for the rest of your life. You should not commit adultery. You know what it is to destroy families, and that's what adultery does. God set up so many laws to protect the family. The family is the basic unit of all civilizations. This is the starting point. And by the way, human beings have a very long training period that we have to give our children, don't we? We don't dismiss them until they're about 18 or 20. Now I think it's 26 before you can get them off insurance, maybe. It's taking long to mature them, isn't it? But we have such a long time to train them, but that's the greatest duty of man and woman is train your children. It's the, so goes the family, so goes the nation. And there's a lot of truth in that. You shall not steal. What does that tell you in a short sentence? How can stealing take place in a commune? A lot of people think they had everything in common. They didn't. How can stealing take place in a commune? It can't. This ensures the right to property, does it not? And we've dealt that way all the way through the Bible. The one time and it wasn't a pure communism, that when they were down there after the Lord was crucified and stayed over the 50 days, there was such a mob of people there that they wanted to see what happened and take advantage of the other feast, that they ran out of food. And evidently there were an awful lot of Greek widows down there, because that was the first problem the church had, didn't it? You got to take care of these Greek widows. And so what did they do? They appointed 7 deacons, and they said, we've got to keep on spreading the gospel. That's what they're staying here for. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Well, that's a premise that goes right to our court system. Our court systems depend on the testimony of eyewitnesses and things of this nature, don't they? Or whatever evidence someone's able to present, what they saw, what they can verify. False witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Can you legislate this? Jay and I were talking about legislating morality. We try it all the time. What can legislation do for you? All it can do is punish you, isn't it? It's a threat of being punished that should deter us, but it's not real successful at times. And all of this is what really turns us sometime. If we permit ourselves to undertake these restrictions God puts on us, we find that we really go down as a human being. We're certainly not one God would be proud of, maybe even accept as his own. I thank you for your attention tonight. I hope this is giving you a little different look on this. These people were not surprised with this kind of covenant. They could accept it because they've been used to it. And so it passed. By the way, can I say one other thing before you go? How long did it take these people to stay scared to death? 40 days while Moses is up on the mount. What's happened to this guy? Make us some gods to get us out of here. Thank you.
Everybody, can y'all hear me? We good? All right. Real quick, if you want to go ahead and mark in your songbook, so before I forget this number, the invitation song is going to be 275, 275. That'll be the invitation song, 275. So just a few things to kind of go over. Our prayer list, Delaney Cock, friend of Kristen Hicks, she was on here. Pansy Colvin, Randall Tuck. Is there anyone new that we need to add to this list? Roy Bilbrey, he's on here. He had triple bypass at Centennial today. I don't know if many people know that or not. But we probably need to keep him in our prayer list. Martha Carver, Brianna, how do you pronounce that? Nos. Mickey Perry, Eric Carver. We need Ginger, Miss Ginger. She asked for us to pray for her. Her feet have been bothering her, so let's just kind of keep her in our prayers and. Maybe they will start to feel better. Is there anyone else to add to this list? Anyone else? Anyone that I did not mention? Anyone that I don't know of? Okay. Janie Cook? Do we know what happened? So she had some testing run, and so they're waiting for results. So let's pray for those results. Make sure that they are good results. Okay, so some upcoming events that we have going on. I just want everyone to know that we have a lot of things going on here in the month of October for the Church of Lafayette. That I hope that the church will be heavily involved in. Some really amazing events. The first event that we have now. It's not just a youth event, it's a church event, is Trunk or Treat. Every year we do Trunk or Treat. Last year we changed our Trunk or Treat. We moved it off of Halloween because we noticed that a lot of people like to have Trick or Treat at their house, which is completely understandable. So we moved it off of Halloween. So this year it's going to be on the Saturday, October 28th. And we're going to do what we did last year. We're going to have Trunk or Treat and a chili cook-off. So I'm pretty sure Brett Gentry won chili cook-off last year. So hopefully you are interested in that and you're willing to sign up for that. The sign-up sheet is out in the foyer on the youth board, but don't be alarmed. It is not for the youth. It's for those who are willing to cook chili and participate in this competition. It's a friendly Christian competition. Remember that. There's no arguing, no fighting over this, all right? So I know the trophy is really cool looking. I know every single one of you covet that trophy like I do, okay? My wife is thinking about entering, but she'll automatically win if I'm a judge, so I don't know if that will work or not. The guy laughs. I like it. So please keep that in mind, Trunk or Treat. It is a huge event for us to go into the community and reach out, have outreach to the community. So we really want to see a lot of people come out, as many people as possible come out, decorate your vehicle, your truck, your car. Me and Megan will pull her white car out, open our trunk up, decorate it. Megan usually decorates it. She's more creative than I am. And then you get a bag of candy, you pass out till you have no more candy, and that's fine. Eat chili, enjoy fellowship with each other, meet some people in the community. It's a great time. And I really want to encourage everybody in the church to come out to it, to participate. This way we can really show the community who we are and what we stand for and what we believe. Some other things coming up. We have Ladies Retreat, October 20th through 21st. You want to see Kristen Hicks for more information. Our meal ministry is going on October 19th. Now, I don't know if you've helped with the meal ministry or not before, but if you haven't, you're missing out. I was able to help out last month, and it was incredible. Kind of meeting some people, seeing some the people that you don't usually see on Sundays or or Sunday nights or Wednesdays. And so it's really awesome. Again, that's October 29th. Volunteers need to be here at the church building in the fellowship hall, right, at 8:30 in the morning to help start cooking. So if you're able to volunteer for this, please be willing to help a volunteer. They need as much help as possible, and it's a lot of fun. I'll just say that. And if you have any questions about it, if you need more information, see Don Roberts about that. Another thing, men's prayer breakfast, October 14th, starting at 8 a.m. Whoa, 8 a.m. I know it's really early, especially for me. But if you are a man and you like really good breakfast, I mean really good breakfast, sign up for it. Kids, sign up for it too. I mean, it's a fantastic meal. Sign-up sheet is out there in the back. It is incredible. I love it. Just a few more announcements. Two more, I promise. I'm almost done. Fifth Sunday meal, October 29th. Fifth Sunday meal is October 29th. Chicken and ham will be provided. And services will be at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. And that service will be a teen-led service. We have some teens signed up to lead. Some of them we have. Jared will be leading singing for us. He won't be speaking this time. He'll be leading singing. We have some other young men signed up to do that as well. And finally, the last announcements I have to make for the youth. BYOP. It's the big one. BYOP is for kindergarten through 12th grade. It's gonna be awesome. The past 2 years we have done this. Me and Megan realized that it's just going too late, so we decided to change it this year. So this year it's going to start at 5:30, out back in the refuge. Bring your own pumpkin. That's all you have to do is bring a pumpkin. Paint will be provided. Carving utensils will be provided. So if you want to paint a pumpkin, if you want to carve a pumpkin, come on out at 5:30. Lunch, hot dogs will be provided. Drinks, chips will be provided. And then starting at 7 o'clock, we will be having a bonfire devo for all, kindergarten through 12th grade. And it's going to be a great time. Activities will end at 8 o'clock. So when 8 o'clock hits and everyone's getting out of services, then like right now, and then it'll be over. So parents, you can go and get your child out back near the refuge during that time. That's all the announcements that we have this week. So is there anything else that I missed? Anything that I missed? No? All right, so real quick for our invitation, if you don't mind, everyone turning in your Bibles to Titus chapter 2. Titus chapter 2. If you're wondering where the book of Titus is, it's right after 2 Timothy. I want to read to you guys just a small verse that I think really and truly affects all of us. That's really important to all of us. The youth kind of heard this already in our Bible class, but I want to read it to you guys. I think it involves every single buddy, every single person in this auditorium. Starting in verse 11, it says this: "For the grace of God has been revealed, bringing salvation to all people, and we are instructed to turn from godless living and sinful pleasures. We should live in this evil world with wisdom, righteousness, and devotion to God, while we look forward with hope to that wonderful day when the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, will be revealed." Now, this verse is very meaningful to us in the time that we're living in today. There's a lot of sin in this world. There's a lot of evil things going on in this world, and sometimes as Christians we lose sight. We lose sight of the true meaning of being a Christian. Being a Christian, faith. Faith is one of those biggest things that we talk about, but the second, to me, in my opinion, is grace. And we forget about grace. We forget about how we're saved. A lot of times as Christians, we think, I'm saved when I'm baptized, and that's it. Well, that's false, because here at Titus, it tells us clearly that baptism is not the only thing that saves you. You see, it says, "For the grace of God has been revealed, bringing salvation to all people, and we are instructed to turn from godless living and sinful pleasures. We should live in this evil world with wisdom, righteousness, and devotion to God." As Christians, we need grace. And we receive grace through Jesus Christ, because he went to the cross and he died for our sins. That's how we have grace. If Jesus never went to the cross, if Jesus never shed his blood for us, then we would not have grace. We have grace because of Jesus. And yes, sometimes it may seem like in order to receive this grace, there are strings attached, yes, but it's for our own good. God wants us to live for him. And as Christians, we lose sight of that sometimes. And so tonight, maybe you have lost sight of that. Maybe you have been living in this sinful world too much and you've lost sight of what God truly wants for you, which is to live for him. And if you forgot about that, we can pray for you. And maybe you haven't put on Christ in baptism and you're ready to take that first step as a new Christian. We can baptize you tonight. We have water behind me. And we can do so as we stand and sing this invitation song. Again, thank you guys for coming to services tonight. On Sunday morning, I hope all of you will come out. You're going to hear one of the best sermons that you've ever heard, me preaching. The sermon, I just had the sermon title in my head, but I forgot it. So it's going to be a good one. I hope you guys come out and want to learn more about God and the Bible on Sunday morning. Is there anything that I missed earlier? No. If I can get Dylan, if you don't mind leading us in prayer.